Hello and welcome to Glasgow Rangers Nation with me, your host, Owen James Chandler, brings you all your latest Rangers news. Of course, it is the off season, and you know what? We're entering that twilight zone that is silly season. Yes, it is time because Rangers, of course, got new owners. Not only have we got new owners, but we've also got a new manager, and we've got a new sporting director, and therefore, of course, we are going to be linked with everyone. His dog, his dog's mother, his dog's mother's sister's girlfriend, and his hamster's boyfriend's budgerigar. That's who we're going to be linked with between now and obviously the end of the transfer window when that finally comes. And the transfer window is bloody weird because we've got the little one that's open now before the World Club Championship, and then it closes and then it reopens, and it's just mind-blowing for every football fan around the world. And obviously that World Club Championship coming up in the middle of it, which is just a glorified, I don't know, Super League, Friendlies, World League kind of joke of a league with no English champions, no Spanish champions, no German. Just a joke. Anyway, we're going to talk about two more players that have been linked with a move to Rangers. Very aware of the Flynn Downs link. I will make a video on Flynn Downs, don't worry. But we're going to talk about Mattinho and Vicente Pizarro in this video, two DMs. Now, before I want to talk about Vicente Pizarro, who is a very promising young player and has attracted interest from English clubs, from Italian clubs and Spanish clubs. I want to also kind of mention this, what this implication could be. Is this a squad player? Well, not a squad player. Is this a rotational piece? Is this because maybe, that Martin doesn't see Raskin as a 6, he sees him as an 8, and he wants to use him as an 8. Maybe that's the thing we see, or is it that the club are kind of prepping themselves that very much that Raskin will move on this summer. He was very impressive for Belgium again the other day. I think he rated 8.8 out of 10, 4.8 out of 10 with the two ratings that I saw. Played exceptionally well alongside Kevin De Bruyne. You know what? It must have been a bit of a shock for him, going from. Look, I like Mohamed Diamonde. I think he's a very good player. I love Yanis Hadji. I love Yanis Hadji. But it must be a bit of a shock going from playing alongside someone like Hadji and Diamonde to playing alongside Kevin De Bruyne, one of the best players in world football. He was just a fucking genius. It must be just a hell of a culture shock. It really must be. Anyway, look. Let's. Getting back to what I was talking about. Anyway, what was I talking about? Oh, Raskin. That was it. Raskin. Is this kind of a message that Raskin will be moving on at the end of the, in this window? That there's already talk of him going to an EPL club, Newcastle, Villa, Leeds. That could be an interesting one. Linked with a move for the Belgian. Is that why Rangers are so kind of so focused on getting a DM? Obviously Flynn Downs is a DM, Mattinho is a DM, Vicente Pizarro is a DM. These are all DMs that we're looking at, and is it just because they want someone else to come in, or someone else to play alongside Raskin, or to help Raskin, or is it because Raskin's going to move to 8, or is it because he's leaving? I think these are all equally valid and interesting questions, and I'd be loving to get your thoughts on these, on what you think. What you think with the whole situation. Personally speaking, I hope Raskin stays, and Russell Martin, spoke the other day about his desire to retain both Raskin and Diamonde, and I certainly hope that happens. I think Raskin can play in a number of roles. He has played as an 8 before. I think he can play as a 6. I think he can play in a number of different roles. And also, if you're going to play 50, 60 games, you realistically can't have one player playing those 50, 60 games anymore. Those days are long gone. So interesting times. And what does this mean for Bailey Rice? If another DM comes in, does this mean that Bailey Rice's time at the club is kind of coming to an end? Because, Bailey Rice is a DM. I spoke the other day about, Bailey Rice hasn't really let us down. When he came against Man United, he looked good. He played in Europe, he looked good. He's a promising young player, and he's certainly someone that, when he was at Motherwell, was rated more highly than Lennon Miller. And Lennon Miller is probably one of the best players in Scotland right now, and certainly someone I hope that Rangers are looking at. What does that mean for Bailey Rice? Could this mean the end for him? And, bringing in a player like, Mattinho, or a player like Vicente Pizarro, or even splashing big money on someone like Flynn Downs, could that mean that, this is the end for Bailey Rice and he'll be moved on? Or is he going to be sent out on loan? I think these are all options that were very much been looked at. I think there's a lot of change going to happen over the coming months. Let's start off. This man here, who is Mattinho. Yes, he's Brazilian, so maybe a friend for Danilo and a friend for Hiefte. Very much obviously in that mould. Mattinho, is a player who has spent this season on loan, last season, on loan at Bâle in Switzerland, who have been linked with Ross McCausland, interestingly enough. But he spent there. He's actually owned by Troyes in France. He is a Brazilian, which is always positive. He's Brazilian footballers tend to be quite good. Let's have a little look at him, shall we? He actually, though, is Democratic Republic of Congo international. He isn't actually Brazilian international. Has got Brazilian citizenship, though. So, there we go. He, like I said, he is currently with Bâle. When his contract with Bâle ends on the 30th of June, he will return to his club that own him, which is Troyes in France, where he's under contract until 2026. He's only got a year left on his deal, so it's not like this guy's going to cost an arm and a leg. We all know that the moment you get into the last 12 to 18 months of your deal, your value vastly diminishes, and once you enter the last 6 months, people know that you're basically worth nothing, because most clubs are going to go, I ain't paying, I'm going to wait. You're looking at probably somewhere in the region of around about £2.5 million, £2 million for this player. Very highly rated, very highly thought of. 22 years old, young, up and coming, talented. Again, someone who, is kind of in that bracket of, would be a player who would come in, do a job, plug and play starter, but would, I think, still need to be developed, still need to be coached, but could be worth a substantial amount of money in the next 2 to 3 years, which is, fitting in with that trading model that's been mentioned on a regular basis by Kevin Thelwell, by Patrick Stewart, by Russell Martin, by, all those involved with Rangers at this moment in time. Let's have a little look at some of his stats, shall we? In terms of him as a player, he's just under 6 foot, he's about 5'10", he's right-footed. He is a DM, although he can play in a number of positions. He can play centre midfield as well. So he's not just solely, sort of limited to playing DM. Of his stats for this present season, he's played 12 times for Bâle. He had 2 assists in that time. He obviously played 2 times in the Swiss Cup. He also played in the Eredivisie as well this past season for Sparta Rotterdam. He's been around. He's made 28 total appearances, played over 1,000 minutes of football in this past season. In terms of his clubs, you can see there on the left-hand side or the right-hand side, depends on how you look at the screen. He's played for Sparta Rotterdam. He's played for Bâle. He's played for Troyes. He's played for Fluminense. He's obviously with Troyes now. He's played in a number of different competitions. He's played in the Conference League playoffs. He's played in Ligue 1. He's played in the Swiss Cup. He's played in the Swiss Super League. He's played in the Eredivisie. So, he's got a pretty vast experience for one so young. Good box-to-box, energy. Can also play as that 6 as well. So, there's a number of roles that this man can fulfill. And like I said, he's not going to cost an arm and a leg. He gets stuck in, a decent player. An international. Obviously, I think, the fact that he plays for Democratic Republic of Congo, the AFCON could be a bit of a worry there. Obviously, with that coming up, that he would disappear for a substantial amount of time and hopefully not come back injured. But, interesting person, interesting player. The other one that has been mentioned is Chilean international Vicente Pizarro. This is a young lad who is very, very good. I was reading up on this one, trying to find out a little bit more about Pizarro, and I've got a kind of flashback when it comes to Pizarro. And the flashback that I'm going for here is that flashback to that Uruguayan lad. What was his name again? Damian Garcia, was it? I think his name was. The young lad from Penarol that we tried to sign last summer. And we seemed to be moving forward with that, and then it kind of all stopped and died, and he didn't actually go anywhere. And I think he's been at Penarol last season. But, to me, there's a little bit of similarity there between him and this young lad here. Obviously, Garcia was attracting interest from a number of top clubs in Europe. Garcia was very highly thought of. Garcia was thought of, going on to become a top world star in the future, very much like Pizarro. And I see a lot of kind of similarities between the two of them. Now, Pizarro would cost a little bit more than Mattinho. He's around £4 million. That's the value that's been put on him. Sources like Team Talk and others have kind of suggested that Rangers are interested in Pizarro and have scouted him and have looked at him. And this kind of fits in, doesn't it, with this looking at lots of different markets. We've looked at the Moroccan market, Scandinavian market, South American market is certainly something we are looking at. So Pizarro fits that, he fits that kind of model. He is a 6. He is a player who is, again, tough, get stuck in, good range of passing. Again, this would ask the question about, what is the plan for Raskin? This seems to be someone who could come in again and make an instant impact. He's very highly thought of in his home country. He's very highly thought of in Europe as well. Pizarro signed a new contract with Colo-Colo in 2024 and is seen as a rising star of South American football. So again, very highly thought of on the continent of South America. His performances in his league and for Chile have attracted attention not only from Rangers but also from English clubs and clubs in Italy and Spain as well. His deal runs until December 2027, hence why it would cost a little bit more to get him away from Colo-Colo, which I think is a great name for a football team. There is a release clause in his deal, apparently, which is around £4 million. Hence why, obviously, there's hope that we could get this deal over the line. He is versatile. He can play a number of positions. He can play DM, CM. He can play a number of different roles. He's got good composure on the ball. He can dictate the pace of play. He can dictate the game. And this is the sort of player I think that Russell Martin would be looking for. Martin's talked about wanting that type of player, wanting that type of football style. Pizarro certainly fits with that. This is an exciting talent. This is someone that Russell Martin would, perhaps value in his midfield. Now, Colo-Colo are reluctant to lose him, but with that release clause, they could find themselves in a position where they can't turn down a deal. There is competition. Apparently, Valencia and Juventus have also looked at Pizarro too. Now, I know what you're thinking. Jesus, well, if Juventus and Valencia are looking at him, then there's absolutely zero chance that Rangers can get him. But Rangers can offer him something that Juventus can't. And that's funny one says shit weather. No, it's not shit weather. They can offer him first team football. He's more likely to get first team football at Rangers than he is at Juventus. And Valencia are not the force they once were. They're not the Valencia of Rafa Benitez, guys. They're not the league winning title chance. They win a relegation battle last season. They're a club with limited finances. They're not a club with big money anymore. They're not, certainly, like I said, the club of Gaika Mendieta and Vicente and that goalkeeper whose name escapes me, the blonde lad. I can't remember his name now. I think he dyed his hair blonde. But the club of Rafa Benitez, this is a different Valencia now. And like I said, he can operate in defensive midfield, centre midfield, and Rangers can offer him European football, chances of winning trophies, starting games. Certainly something that that those other clubs can't offer. He is quite a short lad, 1.72 meters, around about 5'6", 5'7". He's defensive midfielder. He actually is under contract until 2027, so he would cost a fee to get out of Colo-Colo. This is his stats. He's made 150 appearances for Colo-Colo during his time there. 8 goals, 3 assists. So you can see scoring goals, assisting is not his big thing. It is dictating the pace of play. It is sitting in that 6 role. It's being that kind of that sexy 6, isn't it? That we all talk about now. He's made over 100 appearances in the Chilean Premier League. He's played in the Copa Chile. He's played in the Copa de Libertadores, which for those of you who are into your football know that that's their version of the Champions League. He's played in Libertadores. He's played in the under-20s. He's played in the Copa Sudamericana, which is, I think, their version of the Europa League. So he's played in a number of different competitions. So has a decent experience in South America. 9 appearances, 2 goals, 1 assist, 5 in the Libertadores and 5 in the Chilean Cup. 19 appearances, 2 goals, 2 assists. And I think the Chilean season could be under. I don't know how the Chilean season works. I'm not a Chilean football fan. I don't watch Colo-Colo, but I'm talking about reports of this lad being a promising, talented, up-and-coming player. Like I said, 2 other names. Yesterday we brought you the names of Connor Cody and Harry Darling. Today we're bringing you the names of Mattinho and Vicente Pizarro. One thing is kind of clear from these names that, reportedly Rangers are looking at. Like I said, Cody, Mattinho, Darling, Pizarro. It's very much these kind of not big money players. It's these players that are, with the exception of Connor Cody, have got a value, have got a sell on, have got money that you can make from them, that up and coming, that are talented. And if you go and you look at how the 49ers Enterprises run Leeds, this would very much fit in with that. Leeds obviously sold their 3 biggest players last summer, Gray, Somerville and Ruta, and brought in players who, kind of didn't really fit the mould of big money signings and weren't signed for masses of money. So, but have done fantastically well for Leeds this year. They've got them promoted after all. So I think, they're very much following a similar sort of model here. Again, it's fitting in with this transfer model. These are both very interesting players. I've got to say, I've read a little bit. I've watched a little bit now of the old Vicente Pizarro. I like him. He looks a good player. He looks a quality player. He is smaller. Like I said, we do seem to be going for world's smallest midfield. But yeah, I think, you put him in with Lyle Cameron, with Nicolas Raskin, with Diamonde, you've got yourselves a hell of a midfield there. You really have. But two very interesting players nonetheless, guys. Let me know your thoughts on Mattinho and Pizarro, two defensive midfield players. And let me know what you think this means about Nicolas Raskin. I'd be loving your opinion. Thank you for watching Glasgow Rangers Nation, guys. As always, on the way out, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. And remember always, we are the people.